We'll call this meeting to order. It is being held in person here in the conference room on the first floor of the Natural Resource Building in Salt Lake. Welcome everyone here today. Recognize we have all of our board members present with the exception of Randy Crozier. Randy will not be with us today, but all the other board meetings are present in person here at this meeting today. Director Adams, would you recognize the staff members who are present with us today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lindsay Russell is on vacation, so Audie is filling in for her today. So I kidded her a little bit this morning and told her she'd get to make a 20-minute presentation, and she promptly ran out of the room after a right cross. So there you go. It's good to see Shalane DiBernardi, Ben Merritt, and Marty Bushman that are here also. We will have some additional staff that'll drop in, but that's who's here right now. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. As far as the first item on our agenda, a welcome and a chair report. Really, it's kind of from my end more of the same. We have been blessed statewide with a lot of moisture. Todd was saying that up in his area had an inch and a half in 40 minutes?
Yeah, in about an hour. It was overfilling the rain gutters. It was pretty crazy, but you could go a couple miles away and some places got absolutely nothing. So it was pretty interesting to see.
Been very interesting. It's been nice to have that low pressure in and see the moisture. Down in Enoch, my sister-in-law lives there, and some of the flooding and the destruction that's taken there has been pretty impressive. My wife was down in Cedar City. I have a daughter that lives in Cedar City, and my wife, after she watched the little twin grandkids and my daughter got home, my wife on the way home decided to stop at the Walmart on the south end of Cedar City, and she texted me a picture, and she had been waiting for 40 minutes after she made some purchases in the entryway to the Walmart, and it looked like a typhoon outside. Couldn't see anything. Finally, one of the store workers said, "Ma'am, I'll help you get out to your car," had a big umbrella. She walked out to her car. The water was up to her knees at the time. Fortunately, she got the car out of the parking lot and got out of town and got back up safely and all that. But that storm had 2 inches in about less than an hour, I believe, on that particular storm. So there has been widespread flooding. Norman mentioned that the bridge has been washed out on the Bicentennial Highway down on the way to Blanding area down there, and that bridge over Cottonwood Wash has been washed out. Jim, I imagine you've had a lot of moisture down your area too. Been a lot of moisture. Where I live in Delta, there has not been one drop of rain. Well, I'll take that back. It sprinkled for 15 minutes one day. And so all the irrigators that I associate with keep asking me, well, this is helping the water in Yuba Reservoir, isn't it? And the answer is not one drop of it is made into Yuba Reservoir. Their next question is, well, that must mean that the guys upstream are over diverting their water rights. And the answer to that also is no. And the reason for that is because their water rights are so low, the base flow of the river, that you can have a lot of flooding before they even get up to what their water rights are. And so, it's been intriguing. In some areas, they've really done well. In other areas, not so well. But anyway, we have been blessed, I think, statewide. Moisture, we do need moisture, and we need continued moisture. And I was listening to on the radio this morning, one of the news reports said that the best thing we can hope for is a very wet winter. And so let's hope for a wet winter. They said that the reservoirs in crisis mode for the state, that they're less than 55%. Boy, I'd take 55% on Yuba. It's hanging right now about 13 or 14%. So, and Otter Creek is almost dry. So anyway, it is dry. Things are looking up a bit. But with that, let's go in.
And Mr. Chair, we will have a presentation on the drought and where things are at in the board meeting. But, I've heard some anecdotal stuff too. And, on the Weber and the Ogden rivers this year, typically they normally, on an average year, they store around 220,000 acre feet of water. This year, they only stored 7,000 acre feet.
Yeah.
That's the type of water year that we've had, 80% snowpack and 30% or less runoff. So
right. It is dry. With that, let's go into and just go over the agenda that will be for our 1 o'clock board meeting. The first item on the minutes, first item on the agenda will be approval of the minutes. Board members, I assume you've all had a chance to look over the minutes. Do you have any comments or any changes that you'd like to make on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I think Lindsay did an excellent job. My only comment is, in my comments, I was off 2 decimal points on how much money people in Box Elder County got. So it was $100, not 10,000.
Which page is that, Charles?
Page 5 of the briefing.
Page 5 of the briefing minutes. It's
Yeah, and it's accurate. I mean, I said it. I know I said it. It's pretty reckless, you know?
the cities are getting 10,000 per person.
Yeah, no, it's only that.
So what would you like that changed to then?
Charles, before you pull that mic closer to you, and if it has a red indicator, tap the button.
Okay, so we're using the new mics.
Yeah.
Okay, I would suggest, because it was my error, that my comments on page 5 of the briefing meeting notes that the number should be $100 per person in Box Elder County cities and not $10,000 per person,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So it's not quite as lucrative if you live in
No,
Box Elder County
no. You know, I have trouble doing the math. I'm not as good as Juliet.
then. Okay, so we'll make that shift in the minutes then, change that from 10,000 to 100. Any other comments or discussion on either the briefing or the regular meeting minutes? Anyone has? Okay, when we get to the meeting, then we will need a motion and a second and vote on the minutes. So if somebody will be willing to do those, we'll appreciate that at the main meeting. Then we'll have a drought update at the meeting. Candace will give us an update on the drought, and she's not here right now, but she will be here. So we'll hear more about the drought. Then we'll go into the projects. And the first project will be a feasibility report on RE 444. It's Willow Creek Irrigation Company. It's in Sanpete County. It's actually close to Sevier County also. It's just barely north of Salina. There is where Willow Creek is, a little town called Axtell, just south of Gunnison. And Ben is a staff member. So Ben, would you like to give us a little information on this, please?
Yes, I would. This is just, it's another metering project for a small irrigation company, just like Chairman Ibsen said. This is a system they provide water, both secondary, potable, and agricultural. They have seen people overusing their water, and then that causes contention. So they're hoping to put in some meters to alleviate that concern. They're expecting to save about 280 acre feet of water, which I believe they intend to repurpose into their agricultural side of things to increase crop production. It's a pretty small project at less than 400,000. Typical board terms, 1%, 15 years. Very basic project.
Okay, I haven't gone and looked at it per se, but I'm very familiar with the area and all of that. And I've talked to these people. Are they going to be any of them here today? Do you know?
Yes, their president will be joining virtually, but there are several members of the canal company who will be here in person.
So some will be person, some will be virtual.
Correct.
So with that, when we get into the regular board meeting, I'll go over the logistics and the protocol for the virtual thing as well. And today you'll notice we don't have a podium in here, so we'll just have it looks like we've got 2 microphones there, and we'll just have them sit where Ben is sitting.
Will we have a laptop for the slideshow to scroll through? Okay.
Okay. Okay, do any of you have any questions on this particular project? Again, it's a combination irrigation, some secondary meters for the irrigation, some of the bigger ag users, and then the majority of them are for small homes. But the majority of the use is through the ag as far as percentage of acre foot used and all that. But And it's intriguing to me that they're saying that they have people that are over diverting, because living at the bottom of the ditch, I think they're all over diverting, but but it kind of tickled my funny bone to hear them internally saying people are over diverting. Any questions or discussions that you might have for Joel on this particular thing? Now, it's in the area that I represent. I will not be able to make a motion on it, so I need someone willing to make a motion. Jim will do it. Okay, so Jim will make a motion. Okay. Any questions on the motion then? It's just pretty straightforward, it looks like. Okay, thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. Okay, under the next project will be special items. It's project RL 585. It's Harriman City. It's a bond insurance grant. It's in Salt Lake County, so it's Juliet's area, and Ben is a staff member also. Juliet, do you have anything you want to say on this? Or
let's let Ben go ahead and brief us on this. Honestly, I'm not super close to it, but I'm supportive of it. I think it's a good way for us to provide, some support in them getting the funds that they need.
Okay, just a small correction. The project number should be RL 588. I don't know if there's an error, but
it's correct in the book on the agenda.
Yeah.
It says 585, so I'll make that note. I didn't notice that. That's a good pickup, Ben. It's as far as in the book and under it is 588.
So yeah, this is a bond insurance grant. I have been with the division for almost 6 years, and this is the first one I've seen. So I will describe it basically. It is exactly that. It is a grant to the applicant so they can purchase bond insurance. Because because the bond is insured, they will see the issuer will see lower risk, which will decrease the interest rate and decrease the cost of issuance of the bond. So they see decreased costs in two ways. They are requesting approximately $75,000 for the grant. The project that they're going to implement, Shalane, did you have something you wanted to add to that before I move on? Okay. The project that they are working on is 5 parts. They have completed a few sections. And I'll give you just a real quick rundown of the different pieces of the project. They're looking to install about 7,000 feet of ductile iron and PVC transmission pipe. This section of the project was completed in June at a cost of about $1.5 million. In East Harriman, they're putting in a dual zone pump station and 2 million gallon water tanks. This has a construction start date of spring 2022 and is expected to cost approximately $14.5 million. Juniper Canyon water improvements, this part of the project, they're putting in a few interdevelopmental connections. This part was completed in June as well at a cost of about $2.4 million. Their water system is separated into zones, so they're putting it as a pump station in what they call Zone 4, or rather they're replacing pumps and upsizing pipelines and valves. This was completed at a cost of about $500,000. And then in their Zone 5, they're installing a new pump station, and that will begin construction in about spring 2022 at a cost of about $1.1 million. So the total project cost is approximately $23 million. Like I said, they're requesting about $75,000 for the purchase of bond insurance. It'll decrease their interest rate by about 0.15%, but that $75,000 bond insurance grant is expected to save them about $450,000 in interest and fees.
Yeah. I could maybe Shalane go in if it's okay, Mr. Sheriff. Shalane, I just have a additional clarification, but maybe Shalane will.
Yeah, I just thought that I would come up since Ben mentioned this is the first time he's seen this. It's probably the first time a lot of you have seen this. And so I just thought I would clarify that, yes, this is something that we've done quite a bit in the past, mostly when interest rates were higher. But it's a way to make the board's funds go a lot further. sure, you're not getting anything back, but you spend a little bit of money to save them a significant amount. And you get to say, well, we put $75,000 and they got a $23 million water project. Um, so the board's guidelines actually specify that you can provide up to 10% of your funds for these grants, credit enhancement grants. So I just wanted to make that clarification that that is something that's in the rules, it's in the guidelines. It was a pretty common thing about 10 to 6 years ago. And then as interest rates fell, and we had more funds available, it didn't make a lot of sense for people, but it seems like it's starting to maybe come back around. And so Zion's, Jonathan Ward from Zion's is very familiar with this program. So, and Harriman had done this before. They'd got some grant money from the board before to build other projects. So they knew of the program. And that's why they submitted their application. And so that's why we're presenting it to you today.
Mr. Chair, is it okay? So I just to clarify, I think when this application initially came through, I will be honest, I thought that it was more of a like moral obligation where we wouldn't necessarily put money out for the insurance, but we would just like the moral obligation would be there. And so just for the board's like just full transparency, that's what I thought initially. But I actually think that this is fine. I think I like the idea of doing this for these really large ones because it's a way for us to help the project to happen, bring some really good infrastructure improvements into the state. So money coming in to do those things for a pretty small investment on our part. And we're also, I always kind of struggle with competing with the private sector. And I think that everything that we do, we're actually providing an option where private sector options are actually not available. But like something large in this case, that there is a little bit of a gray area there for me. And so I like this. I understand that it's taking money out that won't come back, but I feel like it's a nice way for us to participate, get a really big project done, allow the funding to happen in the market in the private sector. So that's like I said, I think initially I was just think it was moral obligation, but even with the 75,000, I'm very supportive of it.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay, yeah, I think it was around 10 to 15 years ago, previous director Dennis Strong worked real hard with the legislature and then got this approval to start directing to do more and more of these at the time. And so, Shalane's kind of explained the history of it, but here's the opportunity to apply it. And ultimately it saves them, 450, almost a $500,000 and that's great, right? So.
And Mr. Chair, if I could add one more comment, there is another one that we haven't seen for years, but another part of this that we have funded in the past is an interest rate buy down, where we would provide funds at either a 0 or very, very low interest rate, and they would get also funds on the open market at a higher interest rate. And the point would be to get that equivalent interest rate to something the board might provide them anyway, but not have to pay the full amount of the money. So that's another one of another part of this funding that's available from the board. So just to give you all the details.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion from the board on that? Jim, you're the longest term tenured member, and Charles, you're second. Have you ever seen one of these? I know I don't remember one in my, sir.
I don't know if I remember one, but memory is fading rapidly, so it might happen, but I don't remember one exactly like this.
Yeah. Okay, any discussions or board wants to have on this? Okay, that's in your area, Juliet. You willing to make a motion on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one is project RD 674. It's got on the actual project here, it's got 792 also. So it looks like maybe a couple of them from the C&D fund. It's in Davis and Weber counties. It's Canal Company, clarify the interest repayment. Kyle, this is your area, and Shalane's involved in it.
I'll let Shalane go ahead and explain. When I saw this on the electronic packet that Lindsay sent out, I had some questions about it and texted or sent an email to Ben and Shalane, and she indicated she would go into more detail at this meeting, and that was fine with me. So I'm anxious to hear what she has to say.
Yes, this is a fun issue. So I will do my best to explain this. So Davis and Weber County's Canal Company came to the board for a lot of their secondary water projects that were done in the early 90s. They actually did it in phases. So the D674 and D792 were two different phases. One is for Kaysville, one is for West Point. Both were significant. I mean, the Kaysville one was $8.3 million. The West Point was somewhere around 4.8. And the repayments, each project was set up a little differently, but the repayments were set up starting really small and then increasing every year. Another one of those that was based on growth. So we'll increase the payment 5-6% every year. But it started out low enough. Both these loans were also done at 5% interest. Both of the repayments started off low enough that it didn't pay the full amount of the interest. So for instance, on RD 674, the very first payment was only $166,000. And they've increased to where last year's payment was $958,000. So they've increased, which is fine. But D674 in particular was set up so that the balance due after the payments through 2020 would be amortized over 8 years. And so the payments aren't specified exactly what they are. It just says the balance will be amortized over 8 years. But what happened is over the years, as finance has sent out payments and they sent the payment, they requested the payments that were listed in the agreement. When the early payments didn't pay the full amount of the interest due, then there was this deferred interest set aside. Finance charged interest, the 5% interest, on that interest. So instead of just charging the 5% on the principal every year and adding that, they were also charging interest on the deferred interest. So if that's the repayment we stick with, then according to finance, on D674, they've not paid anything towards the principal yet. Everything has just been interest that they have paid. So those 8 remaining payments would be over $1.3 million apiece. According to my calculations, if we don't charge interest on the interest, which I will tell you in the files, there are memos, emails going back probably 15 years trying to get this sorted out with finance. And finally, in the last year, it was said, if you can get your board to agree, we will agree that your repayment calculations are correct if your board will amend their agreement to state we did not intend to charge interest on deferred interest. So according to my calculations, the principal balance should actually be closer to 6.9 million, and the remaining 8 payments should be about $975,000. So that's the details on the D674. Now, D792 was set up a little differently. It listed the repayments, same kind of structure, except that instead of amortizing a balance at any point, they just said, and the balance will be due in the final year. So there's just one giant balloon payment sitting out there, which I think, according to finance, will be over $1 million on that one. I haven't had the chance to go through their numbers and compare them to my numbers, but essentially making a statement, I'll be able to make those corrections and hopefully give them a little relief what we were expecting. So any questions? No?
Clear as mud.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will have some slides that hopefully show that a little clearer, but yeah, that's,
Will they have anyone present to our meeting?
I believe they were planning to have someone here. Yes. I told them we'd like a company representative to verify they're good with modifying.
And
Their
this
agreement.
is for both entities or six.
Yeah, both
674 and
projects.
792. Are we
Yeah.
going to have issues where our published agenda just lists the one?
You know,
Lists 670.
in the report, it lists both, so I would hope not if I need to.
Well, it's both through Davis and Weaver Canal Company.
Yeah, it's
so
the same
It's the same
It's the
company.
same
Mhm.
company. It's just different areas of their service area.
Of their service area.
Mhm.
You comfortable with that, Marty? Okay. Okay, any questions or discussion on that? So Kyle, your area, you prepared? Do you know enough now on this to feel comfortable?
I don't know that I know enough, but it does seem unrealistic that we, charge interest on interest type thing, and that we have an obligation to make that course correction, because I'm sure that was not the original intent of thinking that all the way through the entirety of the loan period. So yes, I'm prepared to make a motion to support that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, we have one new application, RE 450. It's Draper Irrigation Company. And they filed an application from the C&D fund for $22 million. And it would be in Bluffdale, and they basically want to construct a new pump station, shallow groundwater wells, water lines, and things like that. And there's no action that we'll be taking on that today. So anyway, just a heads up, we have a new application for $22 million. Juliet, your area.
Yeah, I know. So will we, just to clarify, I didn't actually make it out to the meeting on this the other day, but I know that Russell went and met with them, and I have on my schedule to follow up with Russell and with the Draper folks. And remember that we did just do a big one with Draper. But will this be on the October agenda or?
I'm not sure if it will be in September or
Okay,
October.
okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Russell what he's
Okay.
planning. And just to clarify, the total cost estimate is about 22 million. So about 18 is what they're requesting from the board.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So that next item on our agenda will be a planning report on the Great Salt Lake water elevations, and Jake will be giving us some information on that particular one. Then we'll have a Lake Powell pipeline report from Joel. Anything you want to say in this audience here before the main meeting on that, Joel, or just give us your presentation then?
I was gonna joke and stand up and say, well, we finished construction. Could be more of the same, nothing exciting.
Okay. Then we will have a water banking report update from Emily Lewis, the consultant. Then we'll have a director's report from Director Todd.
Mr. Chair, we have an updated agenda that wasn't in your board book that was on your table. And it has been published for more than a week, so you did miss the one that Marty Bushman will be chatting about.
Yeah, I was using the agenda in the book. I do have the new one. I thank you for pointing that out. In the main meeting, we'll make sure that we go into board intervention on water horse resources. So anyway, Marty, I would appreciate if you'd come up and give us a brief update on kind of a sneak preview on this.
Thank you. This is a matter where an entity, a company out of Colorado, Water Horse Resources, filed an application to appropriate 55,000 acre feet of water out of the Green River in Utah. The application was filed in Utah with the Utah State Engineer, and the place of use for that water is the Front Range of Colorado. That application was filed back in January of 2018. Interestingly, with this case is the state of Colorado has not approved this water in any place of use. It hasn't agreed that that water will come out of their upper basin, Colorado River Basin apportionment, which presents some problems, among others for Utah and for the board. And the purpose of what I'm asking today with the board is, let me back up just a little bit first, is that the state engineer ultimately denied the application to appropriate, and Waterhorse has now filed a petition for judicial review in the 8th District Court for Daggett County. And I, through the Attorney General's office, I'm asking the board if we can intervene in behalf of the board. So the board will be a party to this petition for judicial review, give it the ability to be involved in any negotiations, but most importantly, to protect the unique interests that the board has in this. I mean, this is a large amount of water that's being taken out of a system already that's heavily taxed with the drought that we've been in, a lot of concerns on the availability of water. And the board's got water rights in that system. I know of at least the one that came from the Bureau of Reclamation that's 158,000 acre feet, part of which of that is going to supply the Lake Powell pipeline. And that's just the unique interests of, protecting the state's resources. So that will be the request, and the motion is that the board authorize the Attorney General's office to file a motion to intervene in this judicial petition for review and in its behalf.
Thank you, Marty. And Marty did touch bases with me on this at the time. Things were moving kind of in a hurry. It's interesting. Normally these things take a while to go through the process, and they being the Waterhorse Resources is really trying to speed this up. And so,
the complaint petition for judicial review was filed back in January.
Yeah.
But by statute, Waterhorse also has to give notice to all of the individuals or entities that protested the application, and that didn't come until May.
Yeah.
And we did think we had a time. We're very early in the proceedings, and then Waterhorse a couple weeks ago filed a motion for summary judgment, asking the court to summarily grant their relief.
Yeah.
And that put us on a fast track quick
to
try to get people that are have interest in this litigation to get them involved and intervened in the case.
Yeah, and the question at the time when they filed that summary motion was, do we need to call a special board meeting to give the Attorney General's office the authority to intervene? We decided to do it in today's meeting, but we were close to having a phone conference board meeting on this very topic, so it's very timely and needs to be done from my perspective. So
the state engineer was able to get the Waterhorse's attorney to agree to an extension on responding to the motion for summary judgment. So it has eased up the urgency just a little bit. We need to move quickly.
We still need to
get that motion filed.
Now is your office doing legwork, homework, preparing our responses and that type of thing too? Yes. Okay.
We've got a motion to intervene prepared. The court grants that, which we anticipate they will. We will then have to file an answer. And from that point, unless the board wants to see each one of those documents and approve them, which will be difficult because they kind of come on time deadlines and you got to do them. But I'll go ahead and prepare those and coordinate with Chairman Ibsen at least, to kind of keep them apprised of what's going on.
Yeah. Do any of you have a problem with that? He's been very good about coordinating with me, but do you want to be involved in the process too, or there are tight deadlines on these?
Not if it slows it down.
Okay. Any questions any of you will have for Marty? I, for one, appreciate his efforts on this and keeping track of it, and it is definitely in our best interest as a state and as a board to stay on top of this and intervene in this case. So we will need a motion from someone. Kyle, you prepared to make motion then?
Yeah, I'd be happy to make the motion if, Marty, if you have some language on what needs to be contained in that motion.
I'll put something together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Marty. Appreciate it. Okay, looking at the agenda, that will fit in right after Joel's report on the Lake Powell pipeline. And after Marty, it will be the water banking report from Emily. And then after that, the director's report from Director Todd, after which we'll adjourn with that. Do you want to do anything on that or wait for information on the board on your report?
Whatever's the pleasure of the board. If you want me to speed things up and give you a little bit of the report here, I mean, some of it's going to come in other discussions. We've talked about the board agenda items. Now we can get into information the board will touch on that, and then maybe I can give a summary quick. So, all right, and information to the board. Joel, you're going to do a status of funds, quick update and discussion. Oh, okay.
All right. The status of funds, we've got under the status of funds tab in your folder on page 1, the revolving construction fund. As we've mentioned, we've kind of starting a new fiscal year, and so you'll see that the projects contracted, there are none right now, just because that means since July we haven't had any new contracts entered on the revolving construction fund. And so that total then down at the bottom does show we now have some funds available for this coming year. And I think that's been helpful for us to divert a few projects to the C&D fund to kind of allow these ones to recover. One of the nice things about the revolving construction fund is they're for projects that are less than $1 million, and the board has the ability to all of the projects out of this fund are 0% interest. And so it's nice to maybe direct projects to this fund where that 0% would be helpful. So this is a lot of times been irrigation companies and agricultural type projects that are less than $1 million. And so we did get to a point where the funds were exhausted here, but it looks like we are starting to recover and may be able to start taking some additional projects out of the revolving fund. On page 2, the city water loan fund has additional capacity as well for some projects. These loans are required, well, not required, but they often have an interest rate, but there is the ability to go down to 0% if the project merits it. And that could be based on the sponsors of the affordability guidelines. Maybe they are already paying more for water than the board's guideline, and that could be justification to lower the interest rate. Or it could be if the well, I guess project benefits probably wouldn't apply so much in this one because you wouldn't tend to get agricultural projects in the city water loan fund. These would be more municipal projects. So again, there is, as you see at the bottom, 5.9 million available in the city water loan fund for projects. So if we get applications that come in from cities and towns, we could steer them towards that fund. And then the largest of the three is the Conservation and Development Fund. On page 3, a healthy balance in this fund, and anticipating additional money coming in through the year with repayments coming in. And I'll remind the board that next year in 2022, we will make our final payment on the recapitalization that we did a number of years ago to do the Provo Reservoir Canal Enclosure project. Essentially, a chunk of the loans were pledged to pay that recapitalization, and those will be completed next year. And so that will free up some additional money that comes back into the revolving cycle. And so the C&D fund is healthy, and so part of what I'm trying to say is, we had that large project for the Deer Creek intake. That was a $40 million project the board approved, and we've had another $10 million recently. And then you have that application coming in for $22 million. And what I kind of want to say is, don't be scared because the funds are healthy, and there will be additional money coming in. And so we're not anticipating any shortages in the C&D fund, and we think we could even handle some additional large projects coming in. So things are looking pretty good. Is that fair to say, Todd? Okay. That's the funding update for now. Are there any questions for me?
Excuse me, Joel, and not a question for you, maybe, or you or Todd, but what's the status of the legislative consideration for the ARPA funds?
Glad you asked. That was one of my topics in my director's report that we'll chat about. So if you'd like to go there right now, we'll do that. What I can tell you is there's $100 million that's still being discussed on what they want to do. There's been several suggestions. It's not final yet. Basically, there's 3 pots that they would like to move it towards, and we're still trying to get the final rules on how it could be spent and then how to work through that. Basically, metering, agricultural water optimization, and some water quality type of things is where they'd like that funding to go. But again, Director Brian Steed is involved with the legislative leadership and the legislative committee working through those. I've been involved working with water rights, drinking water, water quality, the Department of Ag, in some discussions of potential projects, and they are potential projects. We've had lots of individuals that have come forward saying, hey, could you help me with your money to fund this, to fund that? And I keep referring them back to, it still hasn't been decided yet. That kind of will maybe help us move to a next item. Juliet and Shalane and I got a letter from Riverton City on secondary water metering. And Shalane, you want to take this one? Or and I put a copy on your desk on this for this letter.
Sure. So as you may recall, Riverton came to the board for their secondary meter funds. The board committed almost $12 million to be returned at 1% over 15 years, knowing that this project was going to be done in phases, but to install approximately 10,000 meters throughout the city. We did structure it so that repayments wouldn't begin until after they had paid off some already existing bonds. So interest rates would not have to increase. Nothing would change. They'd just pay the same amount from their old bonds towards this new bond. But once the $2 million was set aside in SB 199 in the last legislative session, they said, well, why should we have to borrow if there's grant money available? So I think that's the idea behind this letter that is requesting a modification or maybe different consideration. And their attorney clearly details what their thought process was as they came to us. And I'm not sure we would agree with everything that is in here about the deadlines and the requirements that were set aside in prior legislation. But yes, now we are getting lots of questions about this grant funding. And I haven't come to you with rules to adopt yet because there was a time that we thought maybe the legislation would be changed. As it's written, it says that this section only applies to first and second class counties. That was not changed in a special session. So that's how it stands. So that's what we'll have to work with. So as I work on rules, I'm planning to bring them to you next meeting for adoption, but I'd like a little guidance from the board. There's a couple things in the bill. I think the bill's pretty clear about what is available and what we're supposed to do with it. But as I work on rules, I'd like the board's guidelines if there's going to be some sort of priority system. Some of the things, it is $2 million. It is grant funding. It does say up to 50% of a project cost. It says for small systems, but the small system is an interesting definition because it states that a small secondary water retail supplier means an entity that, one, supplies pressurized secondary water only to the end user of the secondary water, and 2A, is a city, town, or metro township, or, now I've lost my next page, or B, supplies 5,000 or fewer connections. So I think we've all been focused on the 5,000 or fewer connections, but a city, town, or metro township, according to the law, also qualifies for this funding,
Or
regardless of size.
So it's a
The legislature says
yeah.
or.
It still says small though. I mean,
It
that
does say small, but yeah. So I don't know if you want to prioritize the fewer than 5,000 connections over large cities in the first and second class counties, because that requirement is there.
Do you want to?
Yeah, there's lots of questions. I know when Candace and I were working with legislative leadership, it was that they wanted to help the smaller entities. They felt like the bigger ones had the ability to pay and repay type of component, but that's unfortunately not what it says. But we could, I mean, we've been in contact with the sponsor and those types of things, but it probably won't get fixed until the legislative session, if at all. So,
Mr. Chair, can I? I think that we should definitely consider the questions that and the policy that Shalane's talking about outside of this specific case in this letter. And I will say that it may, and I also in the same breath will say that once those criteria are established, if there's room to help entities like Riverton, then I would be supportive of it. I mean, but I will say, as you read this letter, in my initial meetings with, and I don't have my notes from them, but as Shalane mentioned some things, it confirms some of my memory around this. But I don't remember when when they were looking to have to do this funding that they it was all around pressure to comply with the deadline or a law, which that may have been part of it, but I don't remember that as the main motivation. I remember meeting with them and them being very, excited to get the secondary meters installed. And as Shalane mentioned, and I'm glad that I'm glad that our memories are similar. That that they had been like there was a bond that was being paid off, and so the payments could be redirected towards this project, and it was a good, and it was a good project to redirect them to. So just some context as you read this letter. For where I think kind of at least my initial thinking was and interpretation of their motivations when they look to get these meters done. And then I guess just a second comment would be um, I would prefer that the grant funding in terms of priority, I would like to see it go to projects like Riverton, but in terms of priority, I would prefer to support those systems that have really very limited options. So our larger municipalities, which I know the statute says smaller, but our smaller, larger municipalities have some other options. And an example of this would be bond payment. Bond payments stop, the funds can be redirected. Some of the smaller entities, 5,000 connections or less, they're more limited. So that again, that's without that's probably my preference without spending a lot of time thinking about this. But I also do think that it's only fair to reconsider once those criteria are established. It's only fair to reconsider some of the other loans that we've done.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Shalane and I chatted a little bit about this morning. A good reminder is, the state got ARPA funds, but so did cities and so did counties. And that money would be potentially available for them also. And I mean, in Charles area, $10,000 a person, so anyway, sorry, I didn't say that, but anyway, so there are options there too, in addition to SB 199. So
Thank you. My weigh in on this is I agree with Juliet. I mean, the rule does open the door. It implied in the discussions where that it was for smaller systems that didn't have as many options. And Riverton, in my mind, is not a small entity. I personally think that dealing with what we are, where the Senate bill actually says what it does, that we have to leave that option in there. But I personally think we ought to prioritize the smaller systems with the definition that is also in there of 5,000 or less. Personally, is my thought process. I don't know, board members, what Juliet and I have weighed in. Anyone else?
Well, and if I might, Chairman, there was also a request recently for a summary of what funds the board has provided for secondary meters. And so just to refresh your memory, these are the 1% 15-year loans that you've made for secondary meters. In March of 2019, we bonded with Payson City for almost $6 million. In August of 2019, Draper Irrigation Company got $3 million. It was April of 2020 when Riverton got their almost 12. Now we have only actually transferred a third of that into the construction escrow, and I think they've only done a third. I have a meter at my house in Riverton. They installed it last summer. But in May of 2020, Weber Basin Water Conservancy District got almost 2.7 million. And last August, Mountain Green Secondary Water Company got just over 807,000. So those are the projects that you've actually funded. In June, you authorized Midway Irrigation Company. So that hasn't been committed or contracted yet, but you did authorize that project. And I think that one was for 750 meters. So those are the projects you've seen. Of those, I don't know if any of them would actually qualify for grant funds if they came to you now, other than the Riverton one. But knowing what you'd like prioritized, I will write those into potential rules to ask you to consider at the next meeting. So if you have any other input, feel free to contact me.
It's 2 million is the total.
Yes.
Yeah. So
That's the max per year.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think if you can see kind of size wise how
Yes.
that works out.
Other board members, any thoughts? Well, why don't you go along those guidelines then?
Mr. Chairman, let me also say that as Candace and I had looked at this, and Shalane also, when you start looking at the ends, if, ors, bores, nuts, type of things that are all part of this, when we start looking at the number of small secondary systems in class 1 and 2 counties, there's not that many in class 1 and 2 counties. So yeah, that's something else we have to balance too. That's why we originally started talking with the senator and saying maybe we ought to go to 3rd and 4th counties. And again, when the Midway one came forward, we thought, heck, we can help these folks. Well, they're not a class 1 or 2 county, and so we weren't able to go that direction. So that's just a little bit of clarification. I see Candace has got her hand up. Maybe she's going to straighten me out.
Oh, there's no straightening out. You are right on. I just wanted to add, and thank you, Chairman of the Board and members of the board, for your service and being here. One of the things that, that in our discussions with Senator McKell is that there is a requirement that first and second class counties are required to, new secondary connections have to have a meter. And that was part of their intention, is that they're like, look, we already have this requirement on first and second class counties. So let's, put in this grant to help these smaller systems in the area, which Todd is right on, that there are fewer. That being considered, if Senator McKell does make a change to the legislation and allow for second and or third, fourth, and fifth class counties to be applicable for the grants, it might be good for you guys to consider adopting a rule in which any new connections in that area require a secondary meter. So we're not always behind the mark and trying to always retrofit, just having that requirement. It's just for consideration. I just thought as you move forward in making decisions and rules.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Okay, Director.
I told you she'd straighten me out, so there you go. Thanks, Candace. Shalane, why don't you stay up there? Let's talk a little bit about a discussion that we had yesterday in the 2018-2019 legislative session. The legislature, in I think one of the bill of bills, earmarked over $2 million for transparent water billing of the board's C&D funds. As we have tried to work through that process in some of the software billing companies, we've run into issues, but we've now got a company that's willing to work with us on some transparent water billing. And we're in the process of starting to need to write a contract with company and community. Shalane, I'm going to turn it over from there, okay?
Well, as we were discussing it, I said, if this is coming from the board's C&D funds, does the board need to approve this? Similar to the Lake Powell Pipeline contracts, the Bear River development contracts. So we just wanted you to be aware that this is sitting out there. And even though the legislature said, and what was the amount?
It was over
About
$2 million, but we've lost some of that funding. It's lapsed, and so it's now about $2 million.
So what we'd like the board to consider is, do you want each of those brought to you every time they come up? I think the first one we're talking about is somewhere in the range of $75,000 or something like that.
50, I think, 75.
Okay. Or the question I have for you is, and none of you probably remember this, talking about bond insurance grants. This one goes back even further. There was, before the dam safety upgrades that are happening still, there were dam safety studies that had to be done. Every high hazard dam had to complete a study. And the grant funds for that was not the 80 or 90%, it was 50%. We didn't bring every one of those to the board. What we did is, in advance, we got board's approval, just a blanket approval, that when someone submits an eligible application, you have authority to give them 50%. So would you be okay if we did something like that for this transparent water billing? Just bring you a blanket motion that would cover all potential contracts, that provided it's eligible, a complete application for this type of project, then we'd be okay to.
We wouldn't do that in today's meeting. We would put
No.
it on the agenda and make sure that happens. And then we would return and report, kind of like these other reports, and let you know what's going on and let you see the results and those kind of things.
Discussion, questions?
It would be my recommendation that we establish those guidelines and give the board the authority to, give staff the authority to do that, because we certainly have competent staff to provide that information to us. And well, that would be my recommendation.
Well, we can work towards that if that be the will of the board.
Anybody have a different point of view on that? Norm?
I don't have a different point of view. I just think we ought to have a report
We would
of
definitely
the
do that.
information.
We would definitely do that.
Right. And I think we'd treat that like we do. If you recall, you set aside the $5 million for right-of-way acquisition for Bear River Development. Then whenever there are purchases, Marisa comes to you and tells you what has been purchased and gives you the details. So we would absolutely be happy to keep you informed, come up with guidelines up front, a blanket motion, and then report back on the contracts that have been entered into for that.
So if I understand right, there's only $2 million total, right?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
most of these projects are going to be very small
Yes.
projects. And so, I think you need the flexibility to be able to do that without having to come to us every time somebody wants $25,000 or $50,000.
Perfect. Thank you.
We will prepare something for the next board meeting.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to
Okay.
make sure.
If that's okay.
Next agenda.
Yep. Okay, make sure you note that. We'll put that on the next agenda. All right, several other things. As we talked a little bit about earlier, drought, Candace will give a report in the meeting. Just so you're aware, the Great Salt Lake hit a new all-time low on July 21st, beating the previous mark set back in 1963. Jake will give a presentation on that too. Most likely. Pardon? The pumps are an insurance program that we have, that the state of Utah has.
I am trained to use the pumps.
Okay. She has been on a tour. She has turned the pumps. Okay. That is great. Joel, so note that. Okay. I will remind you, as we kid around, in 1963, when we hit the previous low, it only took about 20 years to hit the all-time high. I'm not predicting the future. I'm just telling you what happened in the past, okay? These monsoonal moistures have been awesome, as stated, that we've seen the soil moisture rebound from all-time lows to all-time daily highs in certain areas, but more will come on that. Last Friday, Utah held its first Colorado River Authority meeting. On Friday, they did a bunch of administrative components, setting up electronic meetings, setting up budgets, delegating authority to their executive director, and ultimately took some public comment. One commenter, and so they are started. They've set up monthly meetings that will happen around the end of the month, each month, going through the end of the year. So that has happened. You probably saw some press on that. Just some changes at the department. Darren Bird retired last Thursday was his last day. I texted him on Friday to see how he was liking his first day of retirement. He said he's halfway through Idaho, on his way to Oregon, and ready to enjoy life. Told him we missed him already, and I had a few questions for him. He said, "I'll call you later." So with that being said, Nathan Schwabach was selected by Brian Steed to be a deputy department director. Nathan used to be the communications, I believe was his title, for the department. And so he is now acting in that behalf. Because of some of those changes and other things, you might remember a few of our staff members. Marcy McCartney, she got an offer and left the state employment and is now working outside the state. So we're missing Marcy. And because Nathan got a promotion, they came calling, and we have another great staff member, Kim Wells, who has been our PIO, got a promotion, and she's now, I don't know what her direct title is. It's over communications and public information for the department, basically. So sorry, Kim, if you're out there listening, but Kim is now going to be working for the department effective Monday. So just things change. We have great staff and doing awesome things, but we've lost two, and Candace and I and others are working feverishly to get some people replaced. So just wanted you to be aware of that. As things get drier and drier, we have been more and more involved in discussions on the Bear and the Colorado River, with trying to do things with the existing water that we have to either prop up elevations in reservoirs or to try to find additional resources to help the individuals up and down the river. As we have storage, helping the farmers get their crops harvested for this year is a big thing. So it becomes drought, flood, and economic development, right? So it's all sorts of things. And with an 80% snowpack and a 30%, so to speak, runoff, farmers didn't have a whole season to plan for whatever's they're planting and moving forward. And so we're just trying to work through all of those issues, no matter what river we're on, whether it's the Sevier, or I think Blaine says Sevier, to make it sound a little more exciting. The Weber, the Ogden, the Provo, the Bear, the Colorado River, whatever it is, we're working through all sorts of issues as well as the state engineer. So it makes the days go fast. You can see a yard sign back there. As part of our Slow the Flow campaign, we've developed new signs, doing our part to save water. Green is the new, or yellow is the new green, those types of things. If you would like a yard sign and you have a yellow or you're doing your part, we have a yard sign for you upstairs. Take one and put it on yours, but you have to promise that you're living the pledge or living the opportunity to make sure that we're doing our part. So the next item and issue is our remaining schedule for the year. We have a meeting in Salt Lake on September 16th. So that will be back right here. The plan is to have a board meeting in October 28th in Blanding. And then another one back here in Salt Lake on December. Gosh, I'm getting my dates. September 16th, October 28th, and December 9th. And I think we wanted to have a little bit more discussion on the Blanding tour. Norm, I don't know if it's you or Shalane that was going to discuss or have a quick update on that. I know there's been some talk and thought about with the COVID, the Delta variant, whether we wanted to be and go and do, or try to do something virtual or what. Shalane, let me go to you maybe before I ask Mr. Chair to go to Norm.
Yeah, so I think we just wanted some clarification. My understanding after the last board meeting was everyone wanted to meet in person, but we had some discussion about the tour and that a lot of the projects are really spread out. It might be difficult to get to. And Norm had expressed to me that, it might just be easier, better, more efficient to do some sort of virtual tour. Marisa has actually volunteered to plan something, put it together, to work with Norm to get something scheduled for the day before or the morning of. She also mentioned, what about possibly a hybrid? Maybe going to see a project or two and then a video to highlight others. So I think what we're looking for as staff is we will do what you want to do, but we want to make sure we know what you want to do. So, so I'm looking for input from y'all.
Part of the problem with on-site tours is time and distance, obviously. And part of what I was thinking of can't even be reached now because of a bridge washout. So we're down to one or two projects that I'm aware of that we can even get to in a reasonable period of time. an hour or two from Blanding. One is 10 minutes away and another one is half hour away. So.
And that would be one more thing I'd like clarification on. Everything we've posted, talked about says Blanding/Moab. And
Yeah.
I think we wonder, do you want the actual meeting place hotels in Blanding or Moab? Because that's a big area there too.
Well, for instance, one of our big projects has been Farron Reservoir, or not Farron Reservoir, it's Millside Reservoir, which that's Emery County. That's a little closer, a little different setup, and there might be more things around that area possibly too. I know we said Blanding, but in my mind, it was Norm's area, inclusive.
That's correct. That's correct. It is Norm's area, and he's got a
big area.
really big area that he covers.
Yeah,
So
it-
yes, please give us more direction of what you would like.
I mean, I think it's important that because we're like a statewide board, so I think it's really important that we get off the Wasatch Front. So even if that meant going somewhere and just holding the meeting, I'm okay with that, or, and videoing in. I would like to see a project or two, but I would like to just get off the Wasatch Front. So for what it's worth, that being said though, I think some sort of hybrid might be okay. And I want to be respectful too, though, to staff, because I know that it takes, you put a lot of work into these, and so I think you need to give us feedback as well on, what's reasonable.
Sure. And I think, yes, I've been on a tour where we've been on a bus that went to Otter Creek and Paiute, and it was kind of fun getting around that day. But we truly, we can plan as long as projects are actually accessible. But sending a staff member to, especially when we have regular staff members go out, I know our geologist travels down to the Blanding area regularly to read the piezometers at Recapture Dam. So, getting video or photographs of that project wouldn't be a problem if that's what you'd like to do. But getting on a bus and getting you all there, especially on the same day we might try to see Millsite, might be difficult. But with Millsite being the project that it is, and as much funding as you are providing for that project, I'm assuming you'd like that included on the list of a tour. So whether that's virtually or an actual drive to, we can figure out what you want. We just need to know what you want.
We've spent a lot of money on Millside, and I, for one, whether it's on a tour with this or another time, I personally really want to see that. We just spent some pretty significant funds on Muddy Creek Irrigation Company, which is just next door to Millsite, just down by the town of Emery. I mean, there's two right there that would be closely accessible that I personally would like to see. But
so perhaps if we arranged for hotels and a board meeting actually closer to those sites, still off the Wasatch Front, but maybe not necessarily clear down to Blanding, but somewhere in those sites, maybe actually traveled to see those projects and then possibly had video of the others further south and east, would be something you'd be amenable to?
I personally am. I don't know other board members.
That would work fine because the mill site actually be 4 hours north of Blanding. Toward
There's a
here.
day.
So you'd be off the Wasatch Front, but you would be a long ways from
Okay.
the end of the state.
Mr. Chairman and Norm, let us work with you, but it sounds like you're okay with if we look at others other than just
Absolutely.
the specific Moab Blanding area, and maybe we can do a virtual component of whatever down there that you were thinking, Norm, and
Yeah.
we could do it in around the Farronville site, Muddy Creek component.
Yeah, you've got down clear on the bottom side, you've got recapture and you've got dry wash pipeline. You've got Monticello Reservoir.
So if that's the
Lloyd's Lake.
case, we can work with you to make that work. So we'll plan on something off the Wasatch Front. We won't call it Blanding for
Yeah.
now, but it won't be here.
You'll find more availability of hotels and stuff in the Price area.
Base it out of Price or
Whenever you
whatever,
will.
Castledale, whatever.
Landing
So,
or
yeah.
the prices of them in Moab. So
Yeah, okay.
Call it the Upper Colorado River, as that's what
Perfect.
the map says.
That's great. Thank you for the direction.
Okay. Thank you. We needed that.
Can I just make one request? So I'm realizing that it's just actually schedule wise, but just to put it out there. I'm realizing that the September 16th meeting, I have a commitment that afternoon. And so, I mean, don't schedule around me, but if there's any way to do a morning meeting, that would be nice. But just to put it out there.
If that's what the board needs, we'll try to make it work.
Anybody have a problem with morning meetings? I'm good with them.
I will be gone in September also.
And I will be gone. I made a mistake twice. I scheduled my, a little vacation in the last time, and I have another one the same time for September 16th.
Well,
I'm going to cut short and come back, but if there's others that have conflicts, then
would you like to try to find a different day? I mean, we'll have to look and see what we've got on the agenda. I mean, we talked about 2 or 3 things that we need probably some action on fairly soon. So we probably still need to have the September meeting. I don't know what kind of projects we have. And I don't know that Shalane does at the moment, but would it help if we moved the meeting to the 15th or the 17th for you? Won't be, you're going to be gone either way.
17th would work better for me.
So that would be a Friday.
Would that work better for
Yeah, that would definitely be better.
Let us look and see what we can do. Let's see if the room was even available. So, Jim.
Chairman,
Yeah, sorry.
what about doing the one in September virtually so they can call in and just do a virtual meeting in September and then back together in October? And then it could stay maybe the 16th or.
Well, we could have a potential, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, we could have a virtual option that they could phone in or virtual in if needed.
That would work.
That would work. I don't know. Okay.
And it sounds like the morning, whether it's virtual or in person, if we have it on that day, the morning for Juliet,
Yeah, if possible.
if possible.
So I think if I can try to verify what I think I heard and you all said is we talked about another date, but now we're going to go back to the 16th. We'll try to hold it in the morning with a virtual option for 1, 2 board members that may not be able to be here in person. Is that correct?
I think that's what I heard.
Okay.
That work?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. That was clear as mud. So there we go. Thank you for helping us with that. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I think that's taken care of most of my other items to discuss or information to the board and or director's report. I'm sure I'll come up with something that we can chat about in the brief or the board meeting. We are in the briefing meeting and the board meeting. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Director Todd. That's all we have on our agenda for our briefing meeting, unless any of you have anything else that you'd like to go over. We have anything else at this time? Okay, if not, the other board meeting starts at 1 o'clock. It will be in the same location. So with that, if we can have a motion, entertain a motion to adjourn our briefing meeting.
So moved. Second.
So Kyle made the motion. Who seconded? Wayne seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll take a vote then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We stand adjourned until 1 o'clock. We'll reconvene at 1 o'clock. Thank you.